You stand beneath a sky that does not know your name, yet one familiar laugh can pull your heart toward home with surprising force. The cosmos keeps moving without explanation or apology, yet a note on your fridge can hold you together during a difficult week. We live between that indifference above us and the fierce concern within us, and that tension frames the question of meaning. Can life matter without a divine script? And if it can, what courage does it ask from us right now? Many people look upward and find an answer in relationship to the divine, where purpose is not invented, but received like a calling woven into a larger tapestry. In that vision, dignity flows from a love that precedes you and outlasts you, lending direction to your days and a place for your suffering. Yet even deep faith leaves room for storms and silence, and rigid certainty can harden into a cage that punishes questions and shrinks compassion to the size of a tribe. Others face the same sky and insist that meaning is made rather than found, not a coin you stumble upon, but a bread you knead with your own hands. The burden of choice is heavy, yet the freedom to create value invites responsibility, courage, and care rather than passive obedience. A Danish thinker reminds us that truth becomes alive when we stake ourselves on it, because commitment gives ideas weight and shape in daily life. A German provocateur warns that when old meanings collapse, resentment fills the vacuum, so we must become authors of value rather than borrowers of stale customs. A French novelist names the absurd gap between our hunger for order and the world's silence, and he invites revolt as steady work that refuses despair or cruelty. Religious or secular, we return to the same crossroads where meaning becomes love, creation, and a chosen stance towards suffering that refuses the last word to pain. Care begins in small rooms where attention declares that no one is abandoned, like a neighbor's soup arriving when hope feels thin and the weather matches your mood. Creation and responsibility follow when we decide to leave a useful trace, whether teaching a lesson that finally lands, refactoring tangled code into clarity, or reading the same book again because a child's trust deserves patience. A stance toward suffering forms when grief is stewarded rather than romanticized, as if a rough seed could still grow into shade for strangers we will never meet. Consider a physician in a disaster clinic who cannot fix everything, yet keeps a notebook of small victories, because a hand squeeze and a whispered name prove that attention still saves something real. Her meaning accumulates as quiet pages rather than thunderclaps, and she returns home with practiced habits of care, responsibility, and perspective that work anywhere. Common mistakes blur this recipe for meaning, beginning with confusing pleasure for purpose when they sometimes arrive together wearing the same clothes. Pleasure is good and welcome, yet when it becomes the whole meal, hunger returns louder and sooner, asking for something sturdier. Another mistake is waiting for certainty before you invest yourself, as if mountains must reveal their summits before your first step can matter. A third mistake is fantasizing about grand gestures while neglecting the small, repeatable routines that keep souls from fraying when weather turns rough. Critics worry that if everyone invents purpose, we will fall into chaos, and the concern deserves respect, because communities need shared standards to hold when interests collide. But rigidity brings its own danger when moral life becomes a locked room that starves curiosity and suffocates compassion. The better path is humble conviction, where you hold commitments firmly while keeping your identity spacious enough to keep learning. Humility is not timidity. It is strength that comes with a handle others can grasp without getting cut. Carry these ideas into the week with 3 anchors that refuse to drift even when everything else swirls around you. Choose one weekly act of service that is concrete enough to complete. Choose one daily window for creation that is short enough to protect, and choose one brief ritual of reflection that stitches attention across days. These anchors do not calm the ocean, yet they keep your vessel from breaking against the rocks that every life eventually meets. Use a simple model of compass, map, and fire to keep your bearings when fog rolls in and moods shift without warning. Your compass is a small set of values, honesty, courage, kindness, curiosity, that keep pointing north even when you feel lost. Your map is a plan you revise as reality changes, because roots must bend when conditions do, or else they become elegant illusions. Your fire is the energy source of rituals and relationships that keep motivation warm through long stretches of cold weather. Without the compass, clever plans become polished betrayals. Without the map, good intentions become vague confessions. Without the fire, noble ideas become cold sculptures nobody visits. Recalibrate every month by asking whether your behavior matches your compass, whether your map fits reality, and whether your fire has fuel that warms rather than burns. A therapist and survivor once observed that people endure when they have a task, a love, or a cause that asks for them tomorrow, even when today offers no explanation. We see the same truth on city corners where neighbors stock a free fridge, not because the state commands it or the stars reward it, but because hunger is a neighbor with a name. No epic will be written about grocery lists and temperature checks, yet those ordinary tasks weave dignity through a week that might otherwise unravel. Meaning withers when we chase applause instead of impact, because attention is quick fuel that burns hot and leaves ash behind. Meaning strengthens when we work in the smallest circle where our hands actually change outcomes someone can feel and name. If you can fix a hinge, repair it and leave it swinging true. If you can mentor a kid, keep showing up until hope sounds credible. If you can write honest software for a clinic, write it, and let the logs reflect your values. Face the two cliffs with honesty, because nihilism glares from one side and rigid certainty towers from the other, and both can injure the traveler who wanders too close. Nihilism murmurs that nothing matters, so you might as well watch it all burn while you stay warm for a moment by the glow. Rigid certainty insists only one narrow script can be humane, and in defending that script, it forgets the people it was supposed to protect. The path between them is not a tightrope, but a wide trail called humble conviction, where you stay open without dissolving and stay principled without becoming cruel. Practice that posture by rewarding useful correction, thanking those who challenge you before your mistakes harden into harm. Ask after every project whose dignity was overlooked, and then change the next version before the oversight becomes tradition. Learn also from the long patience of cathedral builders, who began projects they would never see finished, yet still shaped stones and trained apprentices for a light they would never sit beneath. Meaning was not only the finished building, it was the shared craft carried across time with responsibility and skill. Modern equivalents are patient organizations that measure success in handed-down competence and handed-forward kindness, more than in quarterly applause. A choir that outlasts individual voices, a clinic that trains new nurses, a neighborhood group that mentors young leaders, each becomes a vessel where purpose thickens with every season. Preparation matters because suffering arrives like weather, and rituals help you meet it with steadiness, rather than panic or denial. Walk each week and ask the same 3 questions about care, creation, and courage, then answer them out loud to a phone or a friend, and let repetition reveal drift and progress. Keep a small notebook that marks one moment of service, one thing you made, and one way you responded to difficulty, and let those marks guide your next steps. Use threshold rituals to separate zones of your day, so purpose does not smear like wet paint onto every surface until everything turns gray. Before work, name the kind of worker you intend to be and one behavior that proves it. Before home, decide the presence you will bring and put your phone away, so attention can meet affection. The arts remind us that creators toil through failure without guarantees, and the process changes them even before the audience arrives. You do not need to compose symphonies to feel this, because it happens when a recipe finally balances, or a hard concept finally clicks for someone who had given up. Creation gives weight to life by turning intention into form, and that form can serve quietly when nobody is scoring points. Technology can amplify presence or distraction, so curate your inputs the way you curate your meals, because your attention grows in the soil you choose. Silence notifications for protected blocks, schedule your scrolling so it becomes a choice rather than a reflex, and prune tools that harvest your focus without returning value. Ethically, meaning matures when you accept responsibility for more than your own comfort, without pretending you can fix everything for everyone. You are not required to save the whole village to live a meaningful life. You are required to carry your share with integrity and encourage others to carry theirs. This balance guards you from burnout on one side and indifference on the other, both of which flatten the soul and starve communities. Relationships remain the strongest engine of purpose, as research and common sense agree even when they speak different dialects. Call the friend you have been avoiding because honesty is overdue, and let listening rebuild a bridge that can hold both truth and tenderness. Set boundaries that protect the quality of your yes, because consent without capacity becomes resentment dressed as virtue. Faith traditions offer human technologies like gratitude, confession, and rest that keep perspective alive, and you can practice them whether or not you sign a creed. Skeptics contribute vigilance against stale authority, and a stubborn insistence that compassion belongs to no single tribe, and those strengths keep communities honest. Meaning that ignores power becomes comfortable fiction. So use your role to widen the circle of benefit and invite voices usually missed or dismissed. Responsibility includes consequences, not just intentions, and taking that seriously builds trust that outlasts moods and headlines. Return now to the concrete person in front of you, because every grand theory eventually kneels before a single name and a single need. Who needs your time this week in a way only you can give? And what will you make that did not exist before you began? How will you respond when hardship knocks again with its familiar impatience? And what rituals will keep the door open to compassion without letting the storm inside? Hold the image of a hearth, because a meaningful life is not a meteor that dazzles once and vanishes, but a steady fire that warms a room through a long winter. A fire needs tending, it needs fuel, it needs shelter from wind, and it needs companions who gather and share the warmth onward. No star will climb down to keep it alive for you. The work is yours, the matches are yours, and the hands that add fresh wood in the dark are yours. Which small fire will you feed when the day begins, and whose cold hands will thaw, because your commitments outlast your moods? Which promises will you renew without applause, and which boundaries will protect your flame so it warms rather than burns? What will you dedicate yourself to without cosmic guarantees, and how will you know the warmth is spreading beyond your own chair into the lives around you? If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. We do not inherit meaning from the stars. We kindle it together in the dark, and we keep it alive by what we repeatedly choose.